Okay, so cheerleading was first created in the late 1800s, and its primary purpose was to create chants and inspire communities and teams doing games and just other organizations to have spirit and to cheer them on through their organizations. But however, cheerleading has evolved rapidly and become way more rigorous and intensive than when it was first created, and its intent has changed primarily because it is solely based on competition. People, however, even though cheerleading, competitive cheerleading is way more serious than it used to be, people still seem to be blinded by the glamorous aspect of cheerleading. They can't see past the short skirts and the glitter. And for reasons like this, you have court cases like we had a federal judge in Connecticut who ruled that cheerleading is not a sport after a volleyball team argued that they argued to the court that their school shouldn't have to have their volleyball team cut and replaced by a cheerleading team. And the judge ruled that cheerleading is not a sport, and therefore it is not qualified to be replaced to replace the volleyball team. Because the courts rule that cheerleading is not a sport, we have to look and see what a sport is. So when you look at the definition of a sport, cheerleading does meet the criteria, and also cheerleading, it requires a majority of the same skills as other activities that are qualified as sports, and places the same demands. And gymnastics is one of those sports that's already clearly recognized as a sport, and people fail to realize that cheerleading is mostly gymnastics, and therefore I'm here to claim that cheerleading, competitive cheerleading, is a sport. The most common definition of a sport is an athletic activity requiring a specific skill or powers, often of a competitive nature, and or propelling a mass through space. Cheerleaders, they stunt, and usually cheerleaders can be thrown anywhere from 20 to 50 feet in the air, so that would be a mass propelling through space. And also, competition is the hugest part of cheerleading. There's hundreds of competitions a year, and often in the competition, each team will compete against 20 different teams a day, and the competition going for at least 3 days consecutively. A specific set of skills, you must be trained to even be allowed to stunt with the cheer team. You have to get certified by an official association, such as the Universal Cheer Association or the National Cheer Association. So you wouldn't even be allowed to watch or supervise any professional stunts until you get certified. As far as the physical aspect, it's very physical and athletic, and so physical that it's very dangerous actually. And pediatricians are warning now that cheerleading should be qualified as a sport, just so that the safety demands will be there, more safety regulations will be put into place. There's actually, according to Cynthia Labella, a sports medicine specialist at Chicago Lurie Children's Hospital, she says that not everyone is aware of how cheerleading has evolved. It used to be just standing on the sideline doing cheers. However, cheerleading often results in severe sprains, broken legs, neck injuries, and concussions. According to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, there are approximately 37,000 emergency room visits a year among girls aged 6 to 22. And this number is 4 times higher than it was in the 80s when cheerleading first became popular. The skills that are required for other sports like track, the endurance you need for track athletes, cheerleading during a competition, the routines will range from anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes of continuous nonstop jumps, tumbling, stunts, and a dance. So you have to it's continuous motion. You need strength. Often male cheerleaders, they spend most of the time in the weight room building up their strength because you have to have a certain amount of power to be able to throw the girls in the air or carry them single-handed or double-handed. So you also need leg, back, and core strength to be able to have stable stunts and balance. The concentration, it takes a lot of concentration, the same as a golf player would use when they have to hit the ball. There's certain regulations at competitions where it has to be completely silent when they're stunting, because the smallest distraction could cause a stunt to fall and injury. And lastly, gymnastics is one of the main aspects of cheerleading. There's tumbling, and most teams during competition, they have multiple passes, which is where multiple people or at least one person would do at least 10 to 12 jumps in one sequence. And most teams nowadays even require, collegiate teams and all-star teams require that you have some advanced tumbling skills to even be on the team. And stunting, of course, is a form of acrobatics or gymnastics. In the flexibility and balance level, there's a lot of the same skills like a scorpion and bow and arrow, which are flexibility shapes with your legs, which gymnastics people also use. So you have to be able to have a balance also for flyers, the people who go in the air, to be able to balance on people's hands, shoulders, and legs. So by definition, cheerleading could be, it fits all the criteria, the physical aspects, and when you compare it to other sports. And also, today there are more than 3 million cheerleaders in the U.S. and hundreds of international teams. And colleges even offer cheerleading scholarships. So the more popular and more intense cheerleading becomes over the years, just continues to qualify it as a sport.
All right, Erica, it took you almost 2 minutes to get to the proposition. That's a long time in the speech. We know what the general subject is, and I think everybody could tell where you were headed with your argument. So why it took so long to get that formal statement out seems strange. I think it could have been a little bit earlier in the presentation. There's not really a layout of what the secondary points are going to be, and during the body of the speech, it feels a little like it's sort of random. Sometimes we're talking gymnastics, sometimes we're talking about the physical requirements, then you're talking about stunting, and it doesn't seem like there's a particular approach to what those criteria are. That it was the criteria that you were going to use to define what cheerleading was. I thought that it's a sport. I thought that was really clear. And I thought you did a good job identifying what the controversy was, mentioning the court ruling, for instance, and the conflict that the volleyball team had because they were going to get cut out by the cheerleading team, and so that's where some of that controversy comes from. You've got good information on a number of points. You've got some statistical information about the number of injuries and about the number of participants. You did give us a source citation on the injuries and on some of the dangers that are being faced. There was one place where you were talking about pediatricians giving a warning that didn't sound like a quote. It sounded like a paraphrase of what pediatricians might be saying, and then it was followed immediately by a quote that did talk about how much more dangerous it is than it once was, and that I thought you attributed very clearly, and that did sound like a direct quote, so I thought that was good. There's some factual data that you present in the speech. Again, I think we could have a clear source citation on it about stunt certification. I thought that that was a good piece of information, but again, the source citation on it needs to be a little bit sharper. And there's a lot of those kinds of things where I know you're just describing things that you're familiar with, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and I don't think you need to give a source citation on all the things that cheerleaders do, for instance, or some of the comparisons between what people sometimes think of cheerleading is and versus the competition. But whenever you're talking about the criteria and you're making the inference, I think you need to give us a little bit more data. For example, you made several comparisons to other sports like track and golf and those sorts of things, and I think we need more than just hypothetical examples there. I think you need some actual examples to back that up. I thought the generalizations were pretty solid. You used your time effectively, and the presentation was solid, although I think you could be more cheerful. All right.